She asked for calm. They gave her bruises. She tried to show her ID. They pinned her wrists. But when the cameras came out, and someone finally shouted her name, the two officers realized they hadn't just assaulted a civilian. They had just brutalized the new mayor of their own city. And by the time the story hit the news, it wasn't just about one arrest. It was about the system that didn't see her coming. The apartment hummed with silence. Outside, the city blinked. Red lights, rooftop glows, the slow turn of traffic lights waiting for no one. Inside, everything was still. A pressed grey suit hung on the closet door. Jacket shoulders squared like it was standing watch. Naomi hadn't moved in a while, just stood by the window, barefoot on cool tile, watching the skyline blink like a pulse she was about to step into. On the counter, her mother's voicemail waited. Unplayed, the little red icon like an eye. Naomi knew what it said. Her mother always called the night before something big: birthdays, graduations. The first time Naomi walked into a courtroom, trembling behind a stiff blazer and borrowed heels, the message would be soft. Steady, baby, remember who you are. She hadn't pressed play. Not yet. The speech was already folded in her bag, lines memorized, cadence practiced. It said all the right things: vision, unity, opportunity, but none of the real ones. It didn't say she'd sat through 10 debates where the word qualified came with a side of but. It didn't say how many doors she knocked on where people smiled, nodded, and still wrote in someone else. It didn't say what it felt like to win a city that wasn't sure it wanted her. She looked down at the street. A group of teenagers skated past an empty bus stop, their laughter sharp in the cool air. A man dragged a trash bin to the curb, hood up, head down. Two women walked a dog, deep in conversation, not noticing the woman behind the window who would be mayor by morning. She turned from the glass. The kettle had gone cold. The tea sat steeped too long, bitter now. She poured it down the sink, watched it swirl like something being erased. Her hands trembled just a little, not with fear, with weight. The kind of weight that doesn't come from nerves, but from knowing exactly what the job is, and what it costs. She moved slowly through the apartment, double-checked the lock, laid out her shoes, tucked her badge into the inner pocket of her coat. Tomorrow wasn't just ceremony, it was scrutiny, from the city, from the press, from the people who had never believed her smile could hold power. She sat on the edge of her bed, not ready to lie down. She picked up her phone, hovered over the voicemail, then set it down again. Not tonight, tomorrow would come. And when it did, she'd meet it fully awake, with her back straight, with her name steady on her lips. Because Naomi Prescott didn't need the city to believe in her yet. She just needed them to look her in the eye. The morning air was cool, not cold. The kind that carried promise, not warning. Naomi stepped out of her building, just as the sun brushed the tops of the brown stones, soft light creeping between power lines and fire escapes. Her soft grey suit caught the glow like it remembered something. She walked without a coat, without a driver, without a team, just flats on pavement, bag over her shoulder, speech folded twice in her inside pocket, ID in the other, no fanfare, no cameras, just rhythm. The city was waking up around her. A delivery truck hissed to a stop outside the corner bodega. Someone inside shouted good morning to someone they hadn't met yet. A bus passed, rattling loose gravel in its wake. Naomi kept walking. The soles of her shoes whispered over uneven sidewalk cracks and past storm drains that still smelled faintly of last night's rain. A man sweeping the stoop of a laundromat nodded once. She nodded back. He didn't recognize her. Not yet. She turned onto Monroe Avenue, her favorite stretch. The bakery that still used handwritten menus. The faded mural of a girl with outstretched arms no one had repainted in years. She passed a group of sanitation workers loading bags. One glanced at her suit, then back at the street. People noticed her the way they notice weather. A presence, not a headline. That's how she wanted it. The streets would speak more honestly than any press release. She could feel the city in the grit of its bricks, in the way people glanced at the sky before crossing, in how doors were held open or not. You can't lead a place you don't walk through. And Naomi wasn't here to be escorted from car to office like a visiting guest. She paused at a crosswalk. A mother tugged her child's hand tighter as they passed her, not hostile, not friendly, just uncertain. Naomi didn't shrink. She never had. The building came into view slowly. City Hall, with its wide marble steps and old columns too tall to feel humble. Flags rippled without sound. No one waited for her on the steps. She liked it that way. She didn't need witnesses. She touched the inside of her pocket briefly, felt the folded weight of the speech she might not use, felt the corner of her ID card, warm from her body heat. The final block was quiet. She walked it slow, not because she was tired, but because beginnings are worth feeling. When she reached the side entrance, she paused. No entourage, no guards, just Naomi. Then a voice behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am, can we help you?" She turned. Two officers stood by a cruiser, eyes narrowing. One hand drifted toward a holster. She didn't answer right away, because part of her already knew they hadn't come to help. The cruiser didn't idle. It stopped fast, angled just enough to block the alley behind City Hall. One door opened, then the other. Boots hit pavement, the kind of steps that came before voices. Naomi had just reached for the security badge in her pocket when she heard the tone behind her. "Ma'am, what exactly are you doing here?" Not a question. Not really. More like a verdict dressed in uniform. She turned slowly, hands visible, speech still tucked where she'd placed it. "I'm step away from the door." The taller officer, maybe early 40s, squared his stance. His partner, younger, hovered behind him, eyes flicking from her face to the ID clipped near her hip. Unread, unregistered. Naomi kept her posture even. "I'm supposed to be inside in 10 minutes. For what?" the older one asked, already stepping closer. No greeting, no curiosity, just pressure. She glanced at the badge on his chest. Officer Latimer. The younger one, Estrada, hadn't spoken yet, just kept his hand hovering close to the latch on his vest. "I have a meeting," she said evenly. "In a government building? At this hour?" Latimer didn't laugh, just lifted an eyebrow like she'd confessed to a crime. Naomi didn't move. "Yes, and who exactly are you meeting with?" "My name is Naomi Prescott." That didn't register. Or maybe it did, and they didn't expect that name to come from her face. The morning light caught her suit, sharp lines, clean fit, not out of place, but out of category. The kind of outfit they were used to seeing from someone stepping out of a black car, someone lighter, older, whiter. "Let's see some ID," Estrada said finally, his voice thin. She reached slowly, deliberately, pulled the card from her pocket, extended it with 2 fingers. Latimer took it, glanced down, then back up with a frown, but didn't quite shift. "Prescott." Naomi nodded once. "This doesn't say staff." "No," she replied. "It doesn't." Estrada stepped forward now, circling slightly like he was checking for something else. "This area's off limits before 9. You're not cleared." "I'm not staff," she said again, voice even. "I'm leadership." Latimer snorted. Just a breath, but enough. "Look, you can't just say that and expect to." "I don't need to say it," she said. But they weren't listening, not to her tone, not to her words, just to the shape she took in their eyes. A woman standing too still, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, in the wrong skin. Estrada tilted his head. "You trying to get in without clearance?" She didn't answer, not because she couldn't, but because the question wasn't real. It was the beginning of a story they'd already written, and they were about to slam the cover shut. The moment cracked before it broke. She stepped half a foot back, just enough to gesture toward her ID, still in Officer Latimer's hand, when he grabbed her wrist. Not a grip, a clamp, like her movement had confirmed something ugly he already believed. "Ma'am, do not move," he snapped, twisting her arm behind her. "I'm the mayor," Naomi said clearly. Estrada laughed, a short, sharp sound, like someone trying to cover a mistake too late. "Mayor of what, exactly?" he said, stepping in now, posture braced like she'd just confessed to fraud. She didn't raise her voice. "Let me go," but they didn't. Latimer shoved her forward. Her hands went out to catch herself on the hood, but he pinned one down before it could land. The other was already restrained. A sharp sting, nettle, pressure. She felt the heat of the engine under her ribs. She tried again. "I was sworn in yesterday." She said it into the hood. Not yelled, stated, like a fact they'd eventually have to reckon with. Estrada moved to the side, scanning her purse, still not listening. Still seeing a threat, Not a person. Not even a question of ID now. Just containment. Just force. Keep your voice down, Latimer growled, near her ear. I'm not resisting. Then stopped moving. A knee pressed into her back. Her cheek grazed the steel. The early morning chill clung to the car's surface, but the shame in the air was hot. Her breath fogged the paint, and that's when she heard it. A cough, a gasp, a voice soft, uncertain, from across the alley. Wait, is that? Then another. Hey, what the hell's going on? Footsteps approached. The shuffle of someone fishing for their phone. The sound of a camera app opening. Somewhere behind her a city clerk dropped a folder to the pavement. Naomi turned her head slightly, just enough to see the shapes forming near the corner of the building. Staffers, a maintenance worker, a young intern, all staring, all starting to piece it together. The knee didn't leave her back. She looked past it all, past the brick, past the parked cruiser, past the place that was supposed to be hers, and into the eyes of a girl holding a coffee cup with both hands, standing frozen, lips parted in disbelief. That's when someone finally said it out loud. That's the mayor. The officers didn't move. Not yet, but in that instant, something shifted. Not in them, not in the bystanders. In her. She stopped trying to explain. Because explanations are for people who believe you belong. She had something heavier. Truth, and they were still holding it down. The sound of ceramic hitting pavement was louder than expected. A paper sleeve skidded across the concrete, dark coffee bleeding into the cracks near the curb. The staffer who dropped it didn't move to pick it up. She just stared, one hand still raised in half shock, half reflex, like she couldn't decide whether to cover her mouth or reach for something that would make this all go away. On the steps of City Hall, a clerk froze mid-step. Papers hugged to her chest. She squinted toward the alley, blinked once, then again. Her mouth moved without sound. A few feet behind her, a teenager leaned on a bike, already holding up his phone. Recording, no commentary, just framing the shot. Steady now, sharp. The way you do when you know the truth will defend itself if you just let it breathe long enough. That's the mayor, someone finally said. Not a question, not a maybe, a fact. Latimer's grip faltered, just slightly. His fingers loosened for half a breath, then returned. Estrada didn't flinch. His eyes were darting now, corner to corner, trying to gauge how loud this moment had become. Naomi's cheek was still against the hood, cold metal, soft grey wool of her sleeve darkening where it touched spilled coffee. She didn't fight, didn't plead, just drew in a slow, measured breath. I'm the mayor of this city, she said again, low but clear. Latimer looked down at the ID still clutched in his hand, then back at her. His mouth opened, then closed, like the word mistake had reached the tip of his tongue and refused to step out. Estrada glanced toward the sidewalk. The teenager was still recording. A woman across the street had stopped walking, keys dangling in her hand. Inside the window of a passing bus, someone leaned forward, trying to see. They had become the scene, but they hadn't stepped back. Not yet. Naomi shifted her eyes. Not her body, just her gaze, toward the crowd forming near the corner. She saw the city clerk whisper something. Saw a young man in a navy blazer rushing toward them now, hand raised, panic blooming behind his eyes. Officers, he called out. That's Mayor Prescott. Let her go, now. Latimer didn't move. Neither did Estrada. It was too late for clean exits. Naomi didn't move either. Her breath fogged against the hood again. Her wrist still throbbed where it had been pinned. But her voice, unshaken. I told you who I was. And in the quiet that followed, every person watching could feel what the badge on her chest already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. The door burst open with a metallic clatter. An aide, young, out of breath, tie crooked, ran across the concrete, like the ground might crack if he didn't move fast enough. His voice hit the alley before his feet did. Let her go, he shouted, eyes wide, tone sharp enough to slice through authority. That's Mayor Prescott. The words hit like a second impact. Latimer's hands twitched, not from fear, yet, but from the instinctive jolt that comes when the name you've been ignoring finally announces itself. Mayor Prescott. Estrada's face drained of color. He didn't step back, but his jaw clenched hard enough to show through his cheek. Naomi didn't flinch, still pressed to the hood, still calm, but the air shifted around her. The kind of shift that doesn't scream. It stares. Latimer looked down at her again. But this time, he saw more than a woman. He saw the shape of her name. The suit no longer seemed suspicious. The badge on her hip, no longer invisible. The weight of what he was doing had finally caught up with the speed at which he'd done it. He started, voice uncertain, but Naomi spoke first. Step back. It wasn't a plea, not a request, a direction, one she didn't need a title to give. He hesitated, then let go. Estrada moved too, more slowly, as if he thought distance could erase impact. He looked around now, not at her, but at the witnesses, the phones, the staffers lining the steps, the silence in their expressions. No one yelled, no one rushed. They didn't have to. The truth had already landed. Naomi stood slowly, her palms lifted from the hood, leaving faint prints on the metal. She brushed herself off without looking at them, straightened the front of her suit. One button had come undone. She didn't fix it. She turned to face them fully, and only then did they see her. Not as a suspect, not as a silhouette, as the woman who would walk past their desks, sit in meetings above their rank, sign policies that reshaped their command. The mayor, I told you, she said softly. I told you exactly who I was. Latimer's mouth opened again. Empty. Estrada looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. The aide reached her side. Mayor, I'm so sorry. I should have met you. She lifted one hand, stopped him with a glance, then turned back to the two officers. You didn't just make a mistake, she said. You made a statement. And with that she walked toward the steps. Slow, unbothered, steady. The silence behind her wasn't quiet anymore. It was reckoning. They started to speak, both at once, tripping over the scramble of too late apologies. Ma'am, we didn't realize. Mayor, please, let us. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't blink, just adjusted the sleeve of her jacket, slow and precise, like she was folding back the part of the morning she no longer had time to carry. One wrist was reddened where the cuff had been twisted, a soft bloom of bruise already forming beneath her skin. Estrada reached out, just a few inches, like he might offer balance, or comfort, or maybe just proof he still existed in the aftermath. She stepped back. You don't get to help me now, she said. Not cruel, not loud, just done. Latimer lowered his hand, jaw tight, fingers twitching like he still didn't know where to put them. When authority had already left the room, she looked past them. Not through, past. To the steps, to the open door where the aides still stood, unsure whether to speak or retreat. Beyond that, the marble lobby of City Hall, cool and sunlit and waiting. The place she was supposed to enter with applause. Instead, she approached it, wrinkled, bruised, breath steady but tight in her chest. The walk past them was short, but it felt long. Neither officer followed. Neither dared. Her heels struck the pavement softly, rhythmically, each step a rejection of the narrative they'd tried to write on her body. The gathering crowd made room for her without being told. Phones lowered, eyes followed. But no one spoke. It was too quiet for words. She reached the bottom step and paused. The morning light hit the stone columns above her head, making the building glow like something reborn. Naomi didn't look back. Not at the officers, not at the crowd. She just placed her foot on the first step, then climbed. Her spine straightened with each rise, the wrinkle in her blazer folding into dignity, not damage. By the time she reached the door, her silhouette no longer looked disrupted. It looked deliberate. The aide held the door open. She nodded once. Not thanks. A signal that she was ready now. Inside, the air was cooler, quieter still. She exhaled once. Slow. Let it settle into the marble. Behind her, the two men still stood, still realizing, still trying to reverse something that had already been written. But Naomi Prescott didn't need their apology. She had something better. Their silence. The podium smelled faintly of lemon polish and old microphones. Naomi stepped up slowly, fingers grazing the edge for balance, not because she was unsure, but because she needed to feel something solid beneath her palms. The hall was packed. Suits in every row, flashbulbs poised like teeth, a soft murmur pulsing just under the surface, whispers of the alley, the arrest, the video now making quiet rounds on private group chats and public timelines. She hadn't fixed her hair. The mark on her temple still showed, small but impossible to ignore under the lights. A red curve just above the cheekbone. The camera zoomed in. People noticed. Her speech, printed and folded, sat untouched on the podium. She didn't reach for it. She looked up, and the room fell still. "Good morning," she said, voice steady but low. "Let's not pretend this is the speech I planned to give." A flicker in the second row. A city council member shifted in his chair. A news anchor leaned forward slightly, pen poised. Naomi let the silence stretch. She wanted them to sit with it. The weight of her presence. The bruises they didn't ask about. The truth they hadn't prepared for. "I came here today to talk about progress," she said. "About unity. About what we can build when we finally decide to build together." She paused. Her fingers curled around the wood. "But it's hard to talk about building something when the foundation keeps cracking beneath the same people." A murmur rose. Low, surprised, uncertain. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Her face was already doing that for her. "I won't be a mayor who smooths things over," she continued. "I won't be your ribbon cutter, your soft-spoken symbol, your line in a press release. If that's what you voted for, then I'm already the wrong woman." The murmurs stopped. Now it was just breath. Just listening. "This morning," she said, her gaze sweeping the front row, "someone saw a woman standing alone near the back door of this building. They didn't see a leader. They didn't see a mayor. They saw a threat." She let that land. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here for clarity, for policy, for change you'll feel in the bones of this city, not just the headlines." Cameras clicked. A pen dropped somewhere in the back. No one reached for it. Naomi leaned slightly closer to the mic. "And to those who still can't see me clearly, don't worry. I'll be here long enough to make you look twice." She stepped back from the podium. Didn't smile. Didn't bow. Just stood there, as the room slowly rose to its feet. Not in celebration. In recognition. It started as a ripple, posted by a teenager who hadn't meant to catch history. Just a moment. A reflex. 34 seconds of shaky footage, captioned with 4 words. "This is the mayor." By midnight it had crossed 500,000 views. By 2 a.m., 1 million. No sound, just the hum of early traffic, a faint voice trying to stay calm, and the unmistakable image of Naomi Prescott, pressed against the hood of a city vehicle, arms pinned, wrist twisted. No struggle, no threat. Just silence. And 2 officers who didn't listen. By sunrise, it was everywhere. 3 million views. 6 hashtags trending. Comment sections flooded not with outrage, but disbelief. This just happened. She told them her name. They didn't even flinch. She didn't even raise her voice. The local news stations scrambled to keep up. One anchor hesitated before reading the script. Another looked straight into the camera and said nothing for 5 full seconds before cutting to commercial. No one needed analysis. The video spoke for itself. She had told them who she was. They'd ignored her anyway. Across the city people watched in silence. In living rooms, on buses, in kitchens with the smell of toast still lingering in the air. Not loud, not shouting, just watching. Some with jaw clenched. Some with tears they didn't expect. Some with the quiet ache of recognition. At the barber shop on 3rd, the TV played it twice in a row. By the second time, no one said a word. The clippers stopped mid-fade. At Shirley's diner, a woman with a paper menu in her hand whispered, "They really slammed her against her own building." A man near the door shook his head. "They swore her in yesterday." In the precinct the squad room was still. No one touched the coffee pot. Latimer hadn't come in. Estrada had called out sick. But they were still in the footage. Still there, clear as day. There was no audio, but the weight of what wasn't said thundered. And across the city something changed. Not all at once. Not dramatic, but deep. Because the woman in the video wasn't yelling, wasn't resisting. She was leading. Even when they tried to strip that from her. Even when they pressed her against the same structure she now governed. And as the final frame of the video lingered, her face half turned, her eyes locked on the crowd forming behind the camera. People didn't just see a mistake. They saw a mirror. And some didn't like what was looking back. The podium was flanked by flags, the seal of the city behind it. 2 microphones angled like they might soften what was about to be said. They didn't. Naomi stood alone. No entourage. No script. Just a folder in one hand, and a face that didn't blink when the cameras rolled. The police chief spoke first. He fumbled through a brief statement, words like incident and unfortunate, a phrase about context that didn't land right. Then came the department's official response. They didn't recognize her. It was all a misunderstanding. The kind of lines designed to sound like closure. Like the story should end here. Naomi stepped forward before the reporters could. She didn't thank them, didn't smile, just opened the folder, placed it flat on the podium, and looked up. "What happened to me," she said, "is not new." The room went still. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't poor lighting. It wasn't a misread badge or a wrong name. It was assumption. It was power. It was pattern. Cameras flashed. A murmur rippled through the back row. "I'm not standing here today because of who I am," she continued. "I'm standing here because I had the title to make them regret it." She let that hang, not for drama, for accuracy. If I'd been anyone else, she paused, we wouldn't be at a press conference. We'd be at a funeral. The air thinned. No one looked directly at her. They didn't have to. The silence was already an answer. "I'm ordering a full investigation," she said. "Not into the two officers, into the department, into its practices, its blind spots, its culture." She glanced at the police chief. He didn't nod, didn't shake his head, just looked down at the folder now closed on the podium. "This won't be handled internally," she added. "External auditors, public findings, full transparency." A reporter raised a hand. "Mayor Prescott, what would you say to those who think you're overreacting?" She turned slowly, didn't move from the podium, just tilted her head like she was trying to understand how the question made it past someone's teeth. "I was slammed against a car outside the building I'm elected to lead," she said. "If that's not enough for you, you're the one underreacting." No applause, no gasp. Just the quiet realization that the temperature in the city had changed. Naomi stepped down from the podium. The cameras followed, but this time they weren't filming a victim. They were filming a reckoning. The chairs were metal, uncomfortable, lined in uneven rows beneath flickering overhead lights in the old community gym. No podium this time. Just a folding table, a spiral notebook, and a microphone, with a faint hum like it was waiting to be used for something honest. Naomi sat at the table. No blazer, just a simple sweater, and the same steady posture that had become her signature. Her wrist still bore a fading mark. No makeup covered it. People came slowly at first. A few familiar faces. A few skeptics. But the room filled faster than expected. Not with noise, with stories. A man in a mechanic's uniform spoke first. "I was pulled over on my way to work. Didn't signal fast enough," they said. "Ended up face down in gravel." His voice didn't shake, but his hands did. Naomi nodded, wrote his name. A teenage girl raised her hand next. "They stopped my brother walking home. Said he fit the description. The only thing he fit was a hoodie and skin they didn't like." Naomi wrote that down too. Then came more. A nurse, a teacher, a mother holding her son's backpack like it was armor. All of them with stories too specific to be coincidence, and too familiar to be surprise. Naomi didn't interrupt, didn't glance at the time. She just listened. She scribbled names, dates, intersections. "You don't have to write mine down," one woman said bitterly. "It won't matter." Naomi looked up. "It matters," she said, "because silence is what made you think it didn't." The woman blinked, then nodded once, almost too small to see. The microphone passed from hand to hand. No shouting, no demands, just memory, laid bare, offered up like evidence. A boy no older than 10 took the mic near the end. "My uncle told me, if I ever get stopped, I gotta put my hands on the dashboard and not move, even if I'm scared." Someone in the back wiped their eyes. Quietly, Naomi leaned forward. Her voice was soft, but it landed like weight. "This isn't new," she said. "Not for me, not for any of you." She looked at the rows of faces. Some angry, some exhausted, all watching. "What happened to me is what's happened to you. And for the first time, the people who write the reports have to listen." A silence followed. Not heavy, not tense, just full, like the city had finally exhaled something it had been holding for years. Naomi closed her notebook. Not to end the meeting, but to begin the work. The department issued a statement at 8:03 a.m. Officer Latimer has been terminated. Officer Estrada has submitted his resignation. No press conference. No photos. Just a memo sent to inboxes that used to ignore emails from her office. Naomi read it once, then moved on. It wasn't enough. By noon she stood behind a different podium. This one in a library conference room, flanked not by police brass, but by a whiteboard covered in red ink and taped up charts. No suit, no makeup, just a black turtleneck, and the sleeves of a woman ready to roll them up. She didn't open with their names. She opened with numbers. 17% of traffic stops in this city result in no citation. That's nearly 1 in 5 people stopped for nothing. A few reporters looked up from their notepads. Naomi kept going. 62% of use of force reports involve Black or Latino residents. 42 body cams were inactive during those encounters. 42. She stepped to the side, unveiled a timeline. Today, she said, we start fixing that. The 100-day reform plan wasn't flashy. No slogans, no budget bloat, just columns, dates, benchmarks. It looked like what it was: work. Mandatory body cam activation with zero tolerance for failure. Independent civilian review board with subpoena power. A public dashboard tracking complaints, stops, outcomes, all of it. No more secrecy behind closed doors. No more stories disappearing because someone didn't hit record. This isn't vengeance, Naomi said, facing the room now. This is vision. Someone near the back asked if this was personal. Naomi didn't flinch. Yes, she said. It's personal, because this badge belongs to the public, and so does the trust it runs on. And right now, both are broken. A pause. She stepped closer. You elected me to lead, she said. Let me. Her voice didn't rise. Her hands didn't move. But something shifted. Not fear. Not applause. Permission. Outside the city still pulsed. Buses ran late. Phones rang. The world didn't pause for her plan. But in offices, in precincts, in break rooms where she'll calm down, used to be the expectation. There was no calming now, just compliance and calculation. Because Naomi wasn't waiting to be believed anymore. She was writing policy that didn't need their permission, and the clock on change had already started ticking. The crowd began to gather before sunrise. Not with signs, not with chants, just bodies, standing, sitting, leaning against railings and curbs and lampposts, church grandmothers in folding chairs, teenagers in hoodies, nurses still in scrubs, veterans with their hands behind their backs, families with strollers, lawyers with briefcases. By mid-morning the steps of City Hall weren't just occupied. They were claimed, not a protest, a presence. No one shouted, no one raised fists. They didn't have to. Their silence was louder than any bullhorn. When Naomi arrived, there was no motorcade, no police escort. Just her. Same grey suit, same quiet walk, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, staff, aides, neighborhood leaders, people who had once only known her as a name on a ballot or a face behind a podium. Now they moved with her like they'd seen what she'd carried, and decided to carry some too. The crowd didn't part with urgency. They parted with respect. She stepped through them, slow, measured. Her eyes didn't scan. They met. Someone reached out to touch her sleeve, then stopped short. Not out of fear, out of reverence. Because this time no one dared put a hand on her. Not like before. Not ever again. A little girl on her father's shoulders whispered, "Is that her?" He nodded. Naomi glanced up, met the girl's eyes, gave the smallest nod back. The front steps loomed now, the same place she'd walked past, bruised and silent, not long ago. Today they weren't cold marble. They were witness. At the top she turned around, looked out. The city looked back. She didn't raise her arms, didn't speak. She just stood, still, shoulders squared, head high, phones stayed down. No one wanted to shrink this moment into pixels. It wasn't something you watched. It was something you felt. And for the first time, in that square, with those eyes, in the hush of 1,000 breaths held steady, Naomi Prescott wasn't a mayor walking through her city. She was the city, and the silence that held her was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of power. 6 months later, the numbers spoke first. Use of force incidents, down 38%. Unjustified traffic stops, cut in half. Community complaints, the lowest in over a decade. The dashboard Naomi had made public ticked forward each week, quiet and unglamorous, like progress often is. Officers now walked their beats differently, some with guarded posture, others with quiet intent, not because they feared her, but because they'd finally seen what silence could cost. City Hall no longer felt like marble and distance. It felt like skin, like breath, like a place being lived in, not just governed. And Naomi, she didn't change her pace. She still walked to work, still past the bakery, where the owner now waved instead of watching, still nodded to the bus driver, who once looked through her. The girl on the school bench had written her a letter. "You're not a superhero," it said, "but you made them listen." Naomi kept it in her desk drawer. When she spoke now, at summits, at town halls, in rooms where policy was shaped, people leaned forward, not because her voice boomed, it didn't, but because it never wavered. At one conference, a moderator asked how she stayed so calm. Naomi smiled once, then said, "That car hood taught me something." The room went still. The system doesn't bend when you yell at it. It bends when you refuse to move. When you stay so present, so grounded, that it has to shift just to get around you. They wrote that quote down. But Naomi wasn't interested in being quoted. She was interested in being effective. She still met with residents, still took unannounced walks through the neighborhoods, not for optics, for alignment. She knew power couldn't just sit behind glass. It had to walk sidewalks, hear stories, feel asphalt underfoot. And every so often, she'd pass a cruiser. The officers would look up, not out of fear, out of awareness. She never asked for salutes, never needed them. What she got instead were nods, small, earned. She never fired half the department. She didn't have to. Standards fired themselves, one by one. She didn't erase the old culture. She outlasted it. And in its place, something quieter bloomed. Not perfection, but accountability. Not control, but trust. And Naomi Prescott, once mistaken for a trespasser, once pressed against the metal of her own city, stood exactly where they never expected her to, still, upright, and completely in command. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Leave a comment about the moment that hit you hardest. Share this story with someone who still believes quiet leadership isn't real power. Start the conversation at your dinner table, in your workplace, in your community. Honor the Naomis in your life, those who lead with dignity, even when the world looks away. And subscribe for more true stories of justice, grace, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. Because silence can be survival, but truth is how we build something better.